Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagay. Going to do a little bit of a different type of an episode here today. Through all these building of files that I've been doing here over the last, year and change with this channel that I created, but as well as just following the economy and a little bit of the research and reading that I've done. With the announcement that we had today and all that's going on, I wanted to just kind of put a portfolio out, kind of a thesis, and not necessarily a thesis in a scientific way, but an economic explanation of how Canada got to where it is today. Picture this. The year's 1900. The United States has a competitor on its continent. It has an abundance of resources, a growing agricultural sector on incredibly fertile land, a highly educated workforce with a European culture, and an export economy that had economists in London, Spain, France, and New York predicting it would be the next great superpower. If you're thinking it was Canada, you're wrong. It was Argentina. Because of its fast-paced growth and flourishing economy, it became complacent. As the rest of the world kept growing and diversifying their economies, Argentina's elite was coasting on the backs of its workforce, taking for granted the monopolies and control it had on its country. This slowly strangled the competitive edge, desiccated entrepreneurs, and chained down any future development. Outside investors slowly pulled out as their money had no growth. The world watched, and they warned, as they had seen the exact same indicators happen in other nations, even their own. But, fueled by greed of the elite, the economy started to contract, raising costs on the population. This caused political turbulence. The small group of wealthy elites, fearing backlash from the people, which would loosen their grip on power, started to buy up the media and pushing propaganda, promising social equality and government programs, which initially became popular to the ever-increasing lower classes. This set the stage for long-term fiscal challenges. Not able to pay for their country's welfare state, it relied on debt. The more they spent, the higher the inflation rose. With the control of the media and all of the government, the wealthy coasted, reaping great wealth, while the country deteriorated. Hospitals, schools, and every other form of infrastructure began to crumble. Banks started freezing assets, and the general public watched their dollar become worthless. Seizures of property, small businesses evaporating with mass closures, and those who could afford to started to flee the country. Then, the trades and educated, now not able to afford a basic home or ability to save, and had no real reason to stay, packed up and followed suit. Sound familiar? According to productivity and growth projections from the OECD, and again I post all the links in the description below, Canada is one of the weakest performing economies in all of the developed world. If it continues on this trajectory, countries like Mexico will not only continue closing the gap, but can soon surpass us. Argentina has been used for the last decades as an example of how when a country relies on easy money and debt instead of innovation and resource development, a nation can fall into economic ruin and societal disrepair. In 2026, Canada is displaying every single symptom of the Argentinian collapse. We have become a nation, a G7 nation nonetheless, that has stopped inventing, building, and has masked its decline by opening immigration to numbers that are far beyond what not only can be accommodated, but assimilated. Canada, through manipulation of its media landscape and oblivious citizens, passed themselves off as the nice version of America, and using this old stock Canadian heritage, has been convinced that America is now the enemy. But if they were aware of the math, if they could see it as a nation that is cannibalizing its future generations through debt to pay for the present. The OECD is a small club of rich nations, has predicted that Canada is and will continue to be the worst performing advanced economy for the next 40 years. And with the release of the recent job losses of 84,000 in February, the fate of our nation is collapsing at a much faster rate than all of those projected. Now, there's a book called The Betrayal of Canada. It's written by Peter Newman. He argues the Canadian Laurentian elite stopped trying to build a nation and started running a liquidation sale, trading sovereignty for comfort and industry for real estate. According to the Niagara Independent, Canadian household debt hits 377% of our GDP. Canada is now the fourth most indebted people on the planet. Households now owe more than Canada's entire GDP. Housing agencies warned, we were warned of this years ago, but mainstream media throws a soft story on it, and it sweeps it under the liberal carpet. If you think you're wealthy because your home has skyrocketed in value, it's not real. Just like the Liberal Party's promises, Canada's housing bubble is larger today than it was in the US when theirs burst.
Here in Canada, the country's housing agency is calling attention to a potential storm of another kind. CTV's Heather Wright explains.
Canadian households owe more in debt than the value of Canada's entire economy, with nearly 3/4 of that debt tied to mortgages.
Because of the absence of housing supply, Canadians are just piling up the debt. This is creating a lot of risks.
Aled Abiorwith wrote the report for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation and says this debt has put the country's economy at a higher risk in the event of a global economic crisis like a recession.
We're not predicting it, but if there are widespread job losses, then paying off mortgages in that circumstance is really difficult.
Canada's level of household debt is the highest in the G7 and has been growing for years.
Now, this was 2022. Think about that. We are now at 377%. This is such an existential threat. But what was the media doing in the last election? No mention of it, no concern. Clapping like seals because they had a banker Carney who was going to fix the problems with housing. In the meantime, he's racking up a debt larger than the 86 IQ turd that was the head of power in Canada for the 10 years prior. This should shock you. Now, add complications and distortions that never occurred in Argentina. This is where Canada and its positioning is much, much worse. Add that $40 to $100 billion of drug cartel money has laundered through casinos and banks, then used to purchase real estate. Now, the Callum Commission, which was forced to become something because of the amazing reporting of the one and the only Sam Cooper, who exposed it. But little to no action has yet to be done, nor any changes, corrections, nothing. Newspapers and economists warned Canada in 1995 when they labeled Canada an honorary member of a third world country. Everything I state is provided in the description, so don't forget that. You can find all this stuff. Canada's dollar has been plummeting for a decade. We were paying 2026 prices with 2010 wages. And even worse, many are using credit cards to pay the gap.
Well, it is a troubling new survey on how the rising cost of groceries is impacting Canadians. Many say they're eating less healthy food and increasingly buying on credit just to keep up. CTV's Kimberly Fowler is in studio with those details. Kimberly.
Well, Patricia, while many of the people I spoke with today say they haven't had to skip meals or make drastic changes to their budgets, all of them said they've changed how and where they spend their money over the past year because of the rising cost of groceries.
Now, this is how propaganda works. Grocery prices, 60% of Canadians are skipping meals. Think of that, 60% of Canadians are skipping meals. Now listen to the propaganda one more time.
Increasingly buying on credit just to keep up. CTV's Kimberly Fowler is in studio with those details. Kimberly.
Well, Patricia, while many of the people I spoke with today say they haven't had to skip meals or make drastic changes to their budgets, all of them said they've changed how and where they spend their money over the past.
60% of Canadians. Who are they talking to?
Last year because of the rising cost of groceries.
We're gonna make some lasagna.
Gail Barrett is finishing up a grocery run for the day at this local Walmart.
Onions for aromatics.
This is her last stop after shopping at Costco earlier in the day, getting food for her family.
Proper nutrition is important, but we're cutting back in other areas, right? To make sure that we can afford the groceries. I just kind of go to the spots that I know generally have good prices and buy what I can buy.
With rising grocery prices, some Canadians are consciously making hard choices to save money.
If it's not on sale, we're not buying it.
Like Fresco and like Walmart are like the places to go, I find. And like if you go to Farm Boy or like anywhere else, it's just like insane.
A new survey from debt relief firm Spergel finds in the past 6 months, just over 60% of respondents say they skip meals or reduce their portions. More than half say they use credit cards, loans, or lines of credit to pay for groceries. And about 40% say they delayed paying a bill to buy groceries. The survey also finds many are purchasing less meats or proteins and cutting back on fruits and vegetables.
The price of a container of strawberries is like $14 now compared to what it used to be. Even buying baby food, baby formula, I mean, it's tripled the price over the past few years.
Experts say the affordability crisis is leading to more Canadians going into debt and relying on credit to make everyday purchases.
I can't afford to pay the credit cards because the credit card interest rates are so high. We see a lot of times we go over the budget with them. It's sad to see that their food budget is limited, and we know they're not living on that.
Toman says, look at your budget, and if you're struggling financially, don't be afraid to ask for help.
I always suggest they reach out to their community, if their churches, the community resources, the food bank if they can. Also buy in bulk. Watch for the sales, clip your coupons because that does help. I know it's a lot of work, but it's doable.
This is how nations fall. This is how Argentina crumbled. They're not doing their job. People should have recognized these issues. But media. 60% of Canadians are skipping meals. Let that sink in. 2 million people visiting food banks. It's well over 2 million now. This is why those who can afford to leave are. Those who are enslaved in debt are stuck. And even though a good government should know this, instead, they appointed a banker, a Ponzi scheme investor to run our nation. All he knows is how to print money and use people for profit. Canada has forgot how to be a nation, and honestly, we may have had a few governments that pampered the situation and slowed our demise, but we must get back to thinking of building an empire, a true economic powerhouse. Take Prime Minister John A. Macdonald. He knew. He launched what was called the National Policy. He built vast lines of railway from coast to coast. And guess what? He used tariffs to force interprovincial trade. This unleashed provincial economies, and instead of going to the USA, they ended up building an east-west economy that could stand up against any outside influence. strengthening Canadian businesses and consolidating a supply chain from resources, textiles, banking, agriculture, all of it. But 50 years ago, Canada lost its way. Discussions of free trade with the U.S. whispered in the back rooms of Parliament with its conspirators, the Laurentian elite. When Prime Minister Trudeau came to power, he set this initiative into motion, securing their fortunes knowing they could create monopolies and control the electorate through persuasion and donations. Something they learned that was possible when they created the Canadian Dairy Commission Act in 1967, aka the Dairy Cartel. When the patriation of the Constitution was signed, and purposefully, Quebec abstained. Provinces started placing more and more regulatory tariffs against each other in order to guarantee their monopolies. And it secured their power and locked their influence in future trade deals with first the USA, but also knowing they would push free trade with other countries. Now we had a trade system that went north-south. It stifled entrepreneurship. It crushed independent businesses, and it gave total control of all east-west trade to the Laurentian elite. This made our country what's called a branch plant. Now, Albo and Panich called this dependent capitalism in an unequal Canada. I will post the link to their book in the description below, as well as all these other links. Canada, from then on, sold its raw resources at a discount, then would buy the finished product back at a markup. We send oil to Texas, then buy it back as fuels. We sell our raw timber and then buy it back as furniture and finished building materials. We became a satellite state. We live on the scraps of the United States and other trading partners. The profits we should be receiving instead funds the American economy and other nations that reap those rewards. And when the US busts, we get the bill. That's why we have no defense, no military. We are completely dependent on America to protect us. We rely on the US not just for defense. It is our trade and tech. Most times, our own Canadians who studied here fled south for better opportunity when these busts happen. Like the engineers and machinists who built the amazing Avro Arrow. They fled to better pasture and ended up taking the USA to the moon, building their military planes and missiles. We don't build anymore. No tech, no pipelines, no industry, because our Laurentian elite strangles us unless we give them control. We see it now more brightly more brightly than ever. The Eastern elite have tried for decades to steal the resources of the West. From Trudeau's national energy policy to the new age of Carnage Carney's Brookfield electrification corridors and carbon credit scam. As our brain drain flees the country, our productive tax base shrinks. Those who cannot leave cannot afford families because they need to work 16 hours a day. Birth rates plummet. Taxes go up to cover the fleeing generations, entrepreneurs and capital that would have been paying for the aging and the socialist system that is slowly falling into ruins. Especially with this Liberal government's vision of financialization. The idea that to save their elites and keep power, they can save the economy by trading assets instead of making things, printing money to subsidized, hand-picked friends' businesses that they can replace innovation with immigration and debt. These people only know greed, not humanity, not science. They think we create a perfect socialist nation where we will own nothing and be happy. But science and history proves otherwise. They have no fear. They are protected by their position and their wealth. In the meantime, Canadians will be the ones to suffer and be stuck having to clean the mess and try to rebuild. If you are new to the channel, I urge you, check out my previous episodes. There's a lot of great information, and I always post all the information in the description below so you have the access. Knowledge is power, but it's more powerful when it's shared. So let's get on with what's going on here. Obviously, you guys have probably been caught up on this. I just want to go right through a little wee bit more here just so we can kind of do what I normally do, which is the weaving, and we'll tie and stitch all of this together by the end of the episode. So now more than 30 Petawawa-based troops were injured by the Alaska exercise. This is all based on a few people from the actual military that spoke out as long as they could stay anonymous. So they didn't get persecuted for it because they knew that our government wasn't going to let you know about what was happening. Kind of the exact same way. And by the way, this number is now well over 60. That's been confirmed. As well as the fact that they knew because this was being withheld, right? So this is Ottawa's failure to disclose the attack on military in Kuwait. Now, it's shameful without a doubt. But let's just watch how propaganda deals with this. It's disgusting. But you shouldn't be surprised. This is, of course, Canada.
The French-language newspaper La Presse is reporting an Iranian strike on a U.S. airbase in Kuwait, where members of the Canadian Armed Forces are currently stationed. Rafi Boudjikanian has been looking into this. He joins us now live from Ottawa. Rafi, what happened here?
Sarah, what we do know is largely from that newspaper article, which used satellite imagery to show that parts of an Iranian attack.
Notice the nice, calm voice.
On this U.S. airbase in Kuwait, Ali al-Salam, well, they struck a component of Camp Canada, where Canadian personnel are stationed, have been stationed.
Hit a component. A component. That's far from the truth.
In some capacity for more than a decade. They first began to be deployed there under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper during operations against ISIS. It's not clear to us how many soldiers are still stationed there. We've asked the Defense Department about that. I've not gotten a number. We have
pretty big component.
I've been told everyone is safe and accounted for. Now, this attack would have occurred on March 1st in the early hours after the U.S. and Israel began their attack on Iran. So it was part of a retaliation by Iran. This airbase is across from Iran on the Persian Gulf in Kuwait. And so these missiles would have hit different parts of the base, including parts of Camp Canada. However, it appears that no Canadian soldiers were inside the bunker that was hit.
Oh, I thought it was a component. Oh, it's a bunker. Oh, keep calm, keep the calm tone, sell liberal propaganda.
Now, the Defense Department has told us that everyone's safe and that they have been potentially relocated outside the base if needed, or if not, they have stayed there. It's a bit of a cryptic statement. We just got a confirmation that essentially this happened, but no further clarity.
No outrage, huh? How come this guy's not mad? Shouldn't the media be mad? Yes, the media should be pissed right off. Why weren't Canadians told that this had occurred? Because propaganda is doing its job.
Officially.
But there have been others who've been talking about this, Rafi. What kind of reaction?
Oh, talking. They're talking about this.
Are we hearing?
Well, primarily we're hearing from the opposition parties.
Oh, big yawn. Primarily we're hearing from the opposition parties.
The Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois are all asking, why are we finding out all of this through a newspaper article almost 2 weeks after it happened? Conservative defense critic James Bazan saying the government should be way more proactive in disclosing these matters. Have a listen to him.
Now, pay very close attention to his voice. Listen to his voice quiver. This is a serious MP.
Prime Minister Carney has had multiple occasions and press availability to disclose this fact, that Canadian Armed Forces bases in Kuwait were attacked on March the 1st. We also are very concerned that this has been an ongoing lack of transparency, and it's part of the ongoing flip-flops of Mark Carney and the Liberals on their position on the war in Iran.
Now, they cut out the best parts of it.
Now, we have heard from the government, the Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, formerly Defense Minister rather, did address the media today, and she said that she was not previously aware of the media reporting on this, but she had been briefed by Defense Minister McGuinty about it and could confirm to us that all Canadian Forces members are safe, but would not say more, deferring to the Defense Minister. The Defense Minister, of course, is on a trip right now with Prime Minister Mark Carney.
So he's going to pull cover for McGuinty. Now, 15 years ago, while we still had some good media, they would have called out for that man to be fired, which I'm saying he should be fired. McGuinty should be fired.
They hit Yellowknife this afternoon and then are on their way to Norway. Prime Minister Carney was asked about this during a media availability late this evening, and he said he's not the only spokesperson for the government, and then returned to explaining that everyone is safe. So not disclosing any more, really. It kind of struck me that he said he's not the only spokesperson for the government, whereas the chief spokesperson on this issue would have been the Defense Minister, who was in that room with him. He was on that trip, but he was seemingly not made part of that media availability to answer those questions.
Yeah, we're just gonna cover for this guy. We're just gonna smile this off, right? This is no biggie. Oh, this is nothing. Nothing at all. Of course not. Moving along. Here's Carney. Let's just break some more of this hypocrisy down.
My question is for all three of you. As you know, Trump has ordered a 301 investigation into major economies, including your own, alleging unfair labor practices. My question is, do you think that is valid? And Prime Minister Carney, if you'll allow me to double barrel a question in the rain, but many Canadians are probably looking at that latest job report with some worry, some 84,000 jobs lost, the worst in years. What does that say about your handle of things?
Okay, well, maybe I'll start, so I'll get rid of the both elements of it. Look, if you look at the performance of the labor market over the course of the last 6 months, we've created over 80,000 jobs net over the last 6 months. The United States has created 6,000.
Okay. First line of bullshit. Of course, we'll give you all the links. This is from Bloomberg. Unemployment rate up, 84,000 jobs lost in a very bad February jobs report. It goes to break it down, but you got to remember BNN is a semi-propaganda, very left-leaning outlet. Let's break this down into reality. So there is this beautiful factcheck.org. Trump has fired 300,000 federal employees. 300,000. He's already replaced that 300,000 and added an additional 473,000 jobs. Let's go back to Carney and listen to some more lies.
Jobs. Okay, the United States, 11 times the size of our economy. Wages are growing at 4.2%, fastest wage growth in years.
Wage growth. And here is a perfect chart to show you. Red line, Canada. Blue line, United States. Yes. Everything Carney says is a lie.
Unemployment, 6.7%, is lower than the peak the level when I came into office.
No, it was actually 6.7%. Again, lie. Carney won the election, unemployment rate 6.7%. It's the same party. It's the same party. Same lies. Nothing's changed.
To that, which is that given the scale of the trade actions, the uncertainty that is associated as well as with the trade actions by the United States, that is causing big adjustments in the Canadian economy, and that's why we're making major investments across a whole range of areas. I won't go through them all. I think you're probably familiar with them.
Blatant lie. Yes, we are suffering a few more job losses than predicted, but this has all been scoped out. The Economist has already warned this before Trump was even elected, that this government was destroying our country. Absolutely destroying our country. And here's a perfect graph. You can see right where the Liberals came in. Boom! We dropped off a cliff. And Carney comes in. We fall down the pit of no return. Again, Carney is lying. There's nobody holding this evil corporate monger to account. Nobody.
In terms of the U.S. 301 actions announced today against 60 countries, I guess the first thing I'd say is I welcome the fact that the United States cares about labor practices in other countries. The allegation is not labor practices in our countries. It's imports from countries who would be using forced labor or slave labor. Canada has a comprehensive legal framework around that, as is the case.
Okay, that's about enough of this one presser. We're going to dabble once more up back to this goofball, but let's just expose again more lies and hypocrisy. Canada Temporary Visa Program enables abuse on migrant workers, treating them as disposable, the report finds. Again, I will post all of these in there. There are a lot of organizations around the world that have been purposely trying to get Canadians to realize the Liberal Party has allowed corporations to come to bring in foreign workers to fill positions at extremely low wages. They treat them like crap. They put them in bunkhouses where they put 40 people together with bunk beds, no air conditioning. They feed them crap. Then they fly them back home. It also goes in because of us trying to secure more deals with China. BYD Auto Manufacturer, which is the electric car company that they're going to be shipping these cars in, uses slave labor people. There are huge articles written on this, previous videos. They use and abuse the Uyghurs, the Fuyanggang. There's a whole bunch of different groups within China that they use. And let's not forget, they're also using those same people for organ harvesting. Literally, they take their blood types, they test them out, they put them on a list, rich people come in, they grab the person from the area they're locked into, they throw the person down, they put him to sleep while he's alive, pull the organ, there you go, 60 grand, there you go, 100 grand. This is what's going on. I will post down in the description, a link of an amazing interview on a guy who actually wrote a book about it. It'll blow your mind. These are things the Canadian press is withholding from you. They don't want you to know. How can you be a good Canadian if you don't even know what's really going on with the people this evil government is aligning itself with? You just can't make this stuff up, people. Now, the media was pushing all this out that, oh, Canada's going to help, we're going to join, and we're going to put our reserves together, and we're to help drop the oil prices, and all the countries who have strategic reserves, Canada's there. And then one by one, they started to get busted because Canada doesn't have any reserves. I've worked in the patch for over 2 decades. There are no reserves. This is something that the military has been bringing to the attention of Parliament for over 50 years. You notice the timeline, 50 years. We are pipeline dependent. What's the first thing you do if you are going to war with another nation? You strategically cut that nation off from supplies. Take out 1 or 2 pipelines, and guess what? You haven't got the capacity. We have how many refineries? We're not a producing nation. We only have a few. What happens when the oil can't get to the refinery? We have no strategic reserves. But listen, this is him trying to semi-correct the lies that he told, the flip-flops. You know, he tells one thing in French, one thing in English, one thing to this press organization, one thing to... This is what liberals do. Manipulate a press. And the propaganda helps him. This propaganda, people. It's the enemy of true democracy.
Represent an increase in production.
It's our contribution, to repeat, which is what I just said, is to produce.
But is it sort of the existing amount of oil?
It's the amount. That is what we produce. It's not. We don't release it. We produce it. It goes out into the export markets. But the point is, if you look at it, if I may, Prime Minister, from Norway's perspective, from Canada's perspective, we are low risk producers of oil. We are low risk producers of natural gas. We're reliable. We can produce. We're in jurisdictions where what we produce will go to market, and we can deliver it to market. And that is a contribution in a world which is lost, in effect, in the oil case, 15% potentially, some buffer on that, of its oil flow, and 20% of its natural gas flow.
Now, why is it that everywhere he goes, he can't sell any of our oil? But yet, everywhere that the Trump administration goes, they are signing huge oil and gas deals. Because our oil and gas costs way more because of the carbon credit, green, zealot, religious cult. It's not profitable for them. They're not going to buy oil because it's supposedly buying carbon credits. That doesn't mean shit to them. And then who's getting the carbon credits? Are you? No, you're the one paying for it. He's getting the money. Brookfield is getting the money. All of these other global conglomerates, the global cartel.
This is the Strait of Hormuz, and these little arrows represent the ships that carry 20% of the world's oil supply, a supply that's being choked by the war in neighboring Iran. The regime there is doing everything in its power to reduce and even end the transit of energy through this important strategic passageway. The result is a 60% increase in oil prices and an energy crunch all around the world. The International Energy Agency has therefore authorized the release of 400 million barrels of oil from strategic stockpiles in member countries. Canada should be profiting from this. We have the world's 4th biggest supply of oil beneath our feet. We are the only G7 nation without a strategic stockpile of oil, even though we have the most oil in that group of nations. As the CEO of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers told Reuters, any meaningful new production growth in Canada would require additional pipeline capacity and additional export capacity, which is not available in Canada today, end quote.
And this is what the media is trying to not let you know about. The seriousness of this. This is why we have huge oil companies, and now even Canadian oil companies, CNRL, Canadian, fleeing the country, looking to do business elsewhere, looking to try to keep their company afloat because they don't make any money here in Canada after oil, not after the carbon tax and all the rest of the schemes and bullcrap taxes. So they're looking to expand in other countries. First country of choice, head south. We're losing all of these, but this is what Carney wants, because he wants these companies to fail. Again, previous episodes. Then they move in and they pick the bones off the carcasses of Canadian companies by their conglomerates. This is why Kearney now is all, well, we're good with the pipeline going south. Why? Well, because Brookfield brought into that. This is why the only pipelines and natural gas that is actually being fulfilled in the last 10 years all have ties to Brookfield. They all have ties. Every pipeline, every gas link, every electrical facility, every dam, they're all tied. Again, Moose and the Loose does a great job on this. He's put together a great map. It addresses all of it. And mainstream refuses to talk about it. And conservatives, NDP, Green, whatever, they should be bringing this up. Whenever they're holding a presser and the news asks them, they should be saying, oh, I'm so glad you reported on Travis Denraj. Oh, I'm surprised that you haven't, told Canadians that every deal, everywhere Kearney is gone, Brookfield picks up a deal. They have to point this out. They need Canadians to hear it. Now here's some reality.
So today I'm going to take you out of the fog of the immediate war and all the propaganda around Iran and show you how the strategic map of the entire world is being redrawn in real time by sovereign nations acting in their own interests for the first time in 80 years. Now, the establishment media wants you totally focused on Iran, whether it's the CNN narrative that Trump doesn't have a plan and we're in for chaos, or the Fox narrative that he's out for regime change, or that this is a masterstroke against Russia and China. They want you trapped in their narrative. What they don't want you to see is the big picture. They're reporting from inside the old paradigm. But if you zoom out, you'll see something entirely different. This week, the outlines of a new world order, a real one, not Mark Carney's, began to emerge. Great powers acting in their own sovereign interests, converging against the forces of permanent manufactured conflict. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've tracked the imperial great game for decades. Not the puppet show in the headlines, but the real architecture of power. The empire doesn't fight its own wars. It manages them. It needs great powers in permanent conflict because that's what keeps it in control. What we are now seeing is that architecture beginning to fail on every front simultaneously. So let's start with what the president actually told us this week. Because in the same 7 days, Donald Trump drew a line on the record in his own words, separating American objectives from the agendas of two of the empire's most important instruments. And most people missed it because they were watching two different stories instead of one. So on Ukraine, you already heard what he told NBC. Putin is willing to make a deal. Zelensky is the obstacle. But there's a second quote from that same interview that is just as important. When Zelensky offered to help the United States intercept Iranian drones, Trump's response was immediate. Zelensky is the last person we need help from. Let that land. The man whose war the entire transatlantic establishment has demanded America fund, arm, and defend at any cost, Trump just told you he's the last person whose help he wants. Now turn to Iran. In the same week at Joint Base Andrews, a reporter asked the president directly.
Okay. Now, with Ukraine, again, previous episodes. Who is now over there going to help Zelensky do bookwork to rebuild Ukraine? Chrystia Freeland, the daughter of a N-A-Z-I. Which company is secured the largest contracts to rebuild in Ukraine? Brookfield. Which company has put in a bid and is trying to circumnavigate different ways through politics, policy, and legislation and backdoor deals, giving Canadian taxpayer money to Zelensky for control on all of the existing and new nuclear infrastructure? Brookfield. Do you see where this is going? This is why Prometheus is always adding Carney into the mix. He isn't a little player. He is a strategic powerhouse because he now controls Canada. He controls our resources. He controls the Legislative Assembly. He doesn't care about you. He never did. The Liberal Party never cared. It's the same party. Nothing's changed. Not a single law has been changed. All he's done is allowed, and with the help of the Conservatives, they were kind of forced into it because it wouldn't have looked good, by allowing him to pass Bill C-5, which gives him godlike powers and making decisions on anything he wants. Just get it built. It was one of the worst decisions that the Conservatives could have done. But they were forced into it. Why? Because we are still living under the most archaic type of system called the Westminster. And we're like the only country who has never changed any of it to our own detriment. Again, blame your media, people.
Exactly. Whether American objectives in Iran are the same as Israel's. And here's what the president said.
Are you speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu? And are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
They might be a little different, I guess. You know, they're a different country than we are.
Then Defense Secretary Hegseth said the same thing. When asked about Israel striking Iranian oil facilities, which was not a stated American objective, Hegseth said,
well, I would just state by saying Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours.
So, on two different fronts, Ukraine and Iran, the U.S. is pursuing its own objectives. On Ukraine, Trump is saying that Putin is the reasonable party and Zelensky is the obstacle. On Iran, Trump is telling Netanyahu, whose war aims include permanent regime change and an indefinite timeline, that America has different objectives. And President Trump has already acted on that difference, sending Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to Israel after they bombed an oil refinery to tell Israel to stop hitting domestic economic targets.
Boom. This is what media isn't letting you know. This is a power war going on. He is trying to stabilize and bring together all of the countries that have been abused, used, tossed aside, and manipulated through the EU and the global cabal, which is Brookfield and all of them. You can just keep naming all of these big companies. Anybody that goes to Davos, they're in cahoots. Anybody that goes to the WEF, they're in cahoots. Anybody that goes to the Bilderberg, they're in cahoots. This is one big family. It's one big party. And you're not invited because they don't care about you. They don't care. Now, Sam Cooper, he's been exposing all of this. And as I had mentioned earlier, because of the money laundering he found, they built this fake kind of, oh, well, we're going to look into it committee. And again, I'll post all of that in the links. He knows what's going on. Now, because of what he deals in, I don't think he understands the actual global part of it. But he's slowly getting this piece together in the last year, just through how focused he is on his certain journalistic profiles, where he's been concentrating. And because he's been meeting so many people inside the American administrations, this is not just Republican. You got to remember, his first connections was when Democrats were in power. That's where he was starting to blow the lid off our Canadian election interference with China and a lot of the rest of it. First, I want you to listen to what Trump said today.
Numerous countries have told me they are on their way. Can you give us a hint what they are, what that entails, how soon they might be there?
You mean who are the countries?
Yes, sir.
I'd rather not say yet, but we'll be announcing Marco Rubio and the various people that are doing that will be announcing. And I have to tell you, We have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming already. They've already started to get there. It takes a little while to get there. It's like, in some cases, you have to travel an ocean. So it doesn't go that fast, but it'll go fast. And we have some that are fairly local that are doing it. But we'll give you a list. Some are very enthusiastic and some are less than enthusiastic. And I assume some will not do it. I think we have one or two that will not do it that we've been protecting for about 40 years at, tens of billions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. So I'll be reporting that to you in the House and the Senate, and I'll say, why are we protecting countries that don't protect us? And I've always felt that was a weakness of NATO. We were going to protect them, but I always said, when in need, they won't protect us. Now, this isn't need. Need would be one of the big boys. But I will say that we built the greatest military in the world, and we protect people. And if we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us, because we've helped them for years stay out of wars. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can you tell us if you have spoken with French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Have you been speaking with the French President?
What does that mean?
Have you been speaking with the French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I have spoken to him. He's been, on a scale of 0 to 10, I'd say he's been an 8. Not perfect, but it's France. We don't expect perfect.
Are you confident that France will help with the reopening of Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think he's going to help. I mean, I'll let you know. I spoke to him yesterday. I don't do a hard sell on them because my attitude is we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them. But it's interesting. I'm almost doing it in some cases, not because we need them, but because I want to find out how they react. Because I've been saying for years that if we ever did need them, they won't be there. Not all of them, but they won't be there. I was very surprised with the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom, 2 weeks ago, I said, why don't you send some ships over? And he really didn't want to do it. I said, you don't want to do it. We've been with you. You're our oldest ally. And we spend a lot of money on, NATO and all of these things to protect you. I mean, we're protecting them. We're working with them on Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away, separated by a vast ocean. We don't have to do that, but we did it. Well, Biden did it. I mean, I have to be honest with you. Biden got taken to the cleaners. But we worked with them in Ukraine. We don't need to work with them in Ukraine. And then they tell us that we have a mine ship around, and they don't want to do it. I think it's terrible. No, I was very surprised. I told him, we requested 2 aircraft carriers, which they had, and he didn't really want to do it. And then right after the war essentially ended, meaning they were obliterated, he said, I would like to send the aircraft carriers. I said, I don't need them after the war has ended and won. I need it before the war. So I was very not upset, I was not happy with the UK. I think they'll be involved, yeah, maybe. But they should be involved enthusiastically. We've been protecting these countries for years with NATO, because NATO is us. You can ask Putin. Putin fears us. He has no fear of Europe whatsoever. He fears the United States of America and the military that was built by me in the first term. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot to put together in what he just said. I was going to pause it throughout it, but I thought it was important for you to hear it in its entirety and listen to the tone as he was talking. Now, he points out Canada right off the hop. Canada and the EU, but Canada and Britain. We're paying nothing. We have been, we're a satellite state, as I said in the beginning of this episode. We are a satellite state. We have nothing for a military. Nothing. All of the good military soldiers we have they're not re-enlisting. They are leaving the second they get the chance. Not only are they now in a position where they have a government that they don't want to serve because they don't have any, there's nothing common between us Canadians and the Liberal government. Nothing. Nothing at all. Then he goes on to say how with the UK doing what they did, kind of pointing them out for a reason, because at least the UK has a military. They actually have a couple pretty big battleships. But they didn't use them. Why? Because Trump is tearing the global elite apart. That's who run all of our countries. They own the monopolies. This is the reality of where we are. Then he talks about France. Well, what about France? Well, because they're French. Because every time they deal with them, they flip-flop and they lollygag and they don't really tell the truth. He's not a Macron fan. But the biggest point is that he made is Ukraine and Russia. Why are we paying for a war for the global elite who purposely started it trying to antagonize World War III only because they knew that the U.S. under the Democrats or whatever peon was the puppet that was leading that nation was going to allow them to do, because they're all part of this global elite. Trump isn't part of this elite. This is why he purposely ripped apart all of the administration and placed certain people within those positions. Now, a lot of people say, well, yeah, it's because when he says jump, they'll go how high? Exactly. And they're not compromised. And if they are, he tosses them, which he's doing right now with Massey. He's not going to back him up. He's going to bring in another person. The Russia idea is all a fake. Again, watch Ukraine on Fire. Previous episodes, if I remember, I'll post a link on this one. The world has been brainwashed to believe something that's not true. Putin didn't attack Ukraine because he wanted Ukraine. Putin attacked Ukraine because the EU was pushing to try to get Ukraine to go against the Minsk Accord, to go against 3 or 4 other contracts that had been signed with Russia to not put nukes on the border. They want a safe zone. That's it. Then you get the puppet Zelensky, who's appointed. There's leaked conversations with American administration talking to the British administration, talking to people within the EU on who they think they should put in power. This is all out there. He knows this. So he just let Europe know, guess what? I'm testing you. And if you don't come and help America when we need you, don't expect us to help you when you need us. This isn't an idle threat. This is him being wide open to the people that it matters to. Now, again, most mainstream, they're not talking about this. Their heads aren't even there. And if they do know and they work for Legacy, they're not going to tell you this. Instead, Trump bad, Orange Man bad, elbows up, head in the sand, ass high. They don't want you to see what's going on. And now Carney's saying, oh, well, we're just going to conscript 300,000 Canadians. Why? It's not to protect Canada's interest. They're being forced to try and build their militaries as quickly as possible to protect their global elite, because Trump has thrown down the gauntlet and said, I'm not doing it anymore. Instead, I'm going to take all these countries that you have abused and used, and I'm going to bring them together. And we're going to build relationships instead of replacing dictators for dictators. This is what's going on the global stage. And Canada, like I said, is a huge part of the cabal because now with Carney in power, they have secured all of our resources. And don't worry about money, they'll just print whatever they want because they don't care about you. And if anything, it makes them more money because their banking institutions, the Rothschilds and the IMF, are all making trillions of dollars around the world from all the debt that these global elitists have forced upon their citizens, especially here in Canada. As I've pointed out, like with the housing market and the real estate, the immigration, and all the rest of the chaos. Fear, hate, and chaos. These people do not care about you. Listen very carefully. This is the one, the only, Sam Cooper.
The other speech at Davos, Marco Rubio's, where, he said, America is really not trying to dominate Europe or other people. America is the son and daughter of Europe and, will not accept the managed decline. And what he meant by that is pointing exactly to what you're saying. The Davos Circle, the Dominic Bartons, the Mark Carneys, the Lord Peter Mandelsons, the Jeffrey Epsteins, etc., the Jin Lee Kuns of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, those people that, they had decided that global elites are going to profit while softly managing the decline of America. So whatever, if you want to call it, traditional democracy, Judeo-Christian based, etc., all those values, they were going to be, no, it won't matter. We can have a Chinese Communist Party global order, and all the rich, business people around the world are going to be part of it and benefit. Yeah. And where I think you'll, and that where the kind of Davos ideology came into it is everyone else will accept that, and they'll accept that their standard of living is going to decline. They don't need a home anymore. They can have, a very nice rental place, blah, blah, blah. That's where all the social values that I haven't focused on as part of this very much, but does fit into it. And I think you're asking me, do you see it? Yeah, that's a pretty clear way to see it. And I think that Rubio's speech captured it, saying that.
Now, do you see? He's putting the pieces together. Sam Cooper's brilliant. The guy's brilliant. He's got so much on his plate, but yet he's still seeing things on a global spectrum that's starting to put more pieces together on all of the things that he's been discovering and trying to bring to the public. There is much more to this than just a little bit of election interference. Well, in Canada, a lot of election interference. Canada is a stomping ground of corruption. We have been abused. And like I said, it's been 50 years. The elites have been planning it. And then it grew from not just the Laurentian elite, but because of the power we gave to them and allowed outdoor influence to then jump on board, these corporations have slowly been amalgamating and doing backdoor deals and now are part of the global cabal. This is the way that they keep signing themselves up for more money at the downfall of their country, because they don't care. They realize they'll all make money off of our debt and our demise and our resources and the chaos and the deaths as long as they profit and stay in power. And then you get the realization of what's going on in Canada.
State control of the media in Canada has expanded well beyond the CBC in recent years. We now have subsidies that are funding the payrolls of most major organizations in Canada covering news, courtesy of you, the Canadian taxpayer. All this has taken another leap forward, with various government departments now only wanting to talk to media groups who are those state-subsidized entities. Harrison, thanks for bringing this to our attention. I was really shocked when you came to me and explained just what's happening with some of the key federal departments in Ottawa and how they're making the determination of which media to talk to and which not. So break it down for our viewers and listeners.
Roger, we've been talking about this for quite a while. It goes back to 2019 when the government introduced pay payroll subsidies for media, designating you a qualified journalistic outlet. We are, in fact, a qualified journalistic outlet ourselves. But it was supposed to exist within the realm of taxes in terms of subsidy distribution. Ministers assured us that it would not become a press badge that you would wave and then say, okay, I now get access to the government with this. What happened today? We look at Global Affairs Canada, we look at Immigration and Refugees Canada, and on their media page, on their website, they now say that they insinuate that they will prioritize or answer journalistic outlets which have this designation. So basically, like, listen, if you're on our payroll, we'll maybe push you to the front of the line in that club and you can get closer to that red velvet rope.
And there you have it. This is the same Liberal Party. They haven't changed anything. They are just going through with what they started 10 years ago. Carney's been part of this since the beginning. They're all in it together. It's not a new party. Anytime that anybody says, oh, but it's a new Liberal Party, you really need to sit down with them and show them real news. Not just myself. There's hundreds of us out there who are trying to get the truth out. And again, if they haven't reported on what Travis said in testimony, that's right there. That is an instant fail. Ban them. And I run across this lots years ago with the whole, Third Reich Ukrainian they invited into Parliament. How few people knew what happened. There's still people I run into today that don't know what happened. This is the reality. Now, of course, the dogs are barking. Someone must be home. Anyways, that's today's episode. There's a lot there to chew on. I hope you enjoyed. I'm Elias Tagay. Stay informed.